For the first time ever, I am thrilled to say we have an official sponsor for the Dirt Talk podcast, and that's Ariat. I've worn Ariat boots on every job site I've visited over the years, traveling in them across 5 continents. More importantly, I have yet to find a single project where working folks, unlike me, are not wearing Ariat boots and workwear in every condition imaginable. And there's really good reason for that, and that's because it's phenomenal stuff. And the more I've learned about Ariat and the company, the more I've loved their brand. So with this, Ariat is offering any Dirt Talk listener 10% off their next Ariat order at ariat.com/dirttalk. That's 10% off boots, jeans, and workwear at ariat.com/dirttalk or at the link in this episode's description. With that, let's get to the show. Where did Garney originally start? In Kansas City or?
Kansas City, yeah. Started out as a plumbing and utility contractor in Kansas City, Missouri.
Really?
Yep.
How long ago?
We were founded in 1961, so Charles was in the construction. Charles Garney was in construction prior to that with his father.
Okay.
And so he grew up in construction and plumbing, and early 60s decided to go his own way, founded Garney in 1961. Primarily local around Kansas City, doing not plumbing, but utilities outside of the plumbing corridor.
Sure.
And then grew the business from there.
That's what I love about America. You can start a plumbing company in the 60s and make a Garney. Not that long after.
Yeah. And
crazy.
And Charles did a lot with the company in the early days, because one of the things that he recognized was that Kansas City was a good market. But there was a need for good utility contractors other than in Kansas City. Yeah. And even through the 60s and early 70s, we had somewhat of a nationwide footprint in the early years. So mostly through the Midwest and down into Texas. But certainly by the 80s, we were spread all across the country. So.
And was it just because you guys were good at what you did and you just get pulled into different areas? Or was it? I feel like it's never all that deliberate, like we're going to go everywhere. You just kind of start getting pulled in different directions and you end up working across the United States.
Yeah, I think it was, yes, because it was good at what we did.
Yeah.
We also had a specialty at the time, and still to this day, with some of the large diameter pipe.
I see.
And so for years and years, through the early 2000s, actually, we had a group that focused on, they were just referred to as traveling pipe.
Mm-hmm.
So large diameter projects anywhere in the country, from Green Bay, Wisconsin to South Texas to Florida, anywhere there was a large diameter pipe project that required that specialty.
I see.
We would travel and build that project, and that would, generate new opportunities to continue to build more work in that region. And that's what kind of allowed us to scale up and spread across the country.
Has the large diameter stuff, a lot of it is qualifications based nowadays, because it's you want to make sure you do it right.
You do.
When you've got like that much flow going through, if it's pressurized, especially, I mean, it's high stakes stuff. So once you get good at it, qualifications based, it's not, obviously no job's guaranteed, but you have a leg up because you have this enormous resume.
It is somewhat specialized because it is earth moving and utilities combined. So it's a lot of earth that you move to do the trenching, and then the utilities with the pipe. And one of the most critical things with the larger diameter pipe's compaction.
Sure.
So having the equipment and the know-how to get proper compaction around the large diameter pipe, that's probably the most critical part.
Why is the compaction so important on the large stuff?
Larger diameter pipe is more flexible, and having the ability and skill to compact around the edges of the pipe and under the haunches that's the challenging part.
Without
deflecting the pipe in during backfill or allowing the pipe to deflect down. Yeah.
It is. So the first construction project I worked on was large diameter storm drain, like 120
concrete pipe.
Yeah, concrete pipe. It was awesome. It was like 30 feet deep, big 385 excavator. It was a blast. But it's like watching paint dry in a lot of ways, working in
It can be.
It can be because you watch the excavator dig for like an hour. and then you might get a stick in the next hour, and you repeat 3 times in the day, and we got 3 sticks in. This is a big day, big production day. And then I went out to a sewer job, and it was like a transmission line, so it was pressurized sewer line. We were doing like 1,500 feet a day, and it was a blast because you had a crew out in front of you digging, a crew laying the pipe, and then a crew backfilling, and it was just this awesome. It was awesome for me because it's like, this is production. Like, we are really just out here blowing and going. And I know some of the large diameter stuff, you're just out in the middle of nowhere. Like
a lot of the larger transmission lines, yeah.
Yeah. And so you can just, you can really put some pipe in the ground, even with the big stuff.
Some projects, yeah. Yeah.
Until you hit some rock. Huh?
Well, and it varies a lot because there's the cross-country transmission lines, but you have more and more projects in and around, say, the city of Dallas or the city of Houston, where they're still needing to move the large volumes of water. But now you're in an urban setting, so it becomes a little bit more of a challenge. But yeah, it's a lot of fun watching the cross-country large diameter. You mentioned watching paint dry 3 sticks at a day, but you get out on some of the long distance transmission lines and crews and groups of people that are really good at what they do. And it's a little bit like watching a ballet is how I put it, between the lead excavator and backfill and the dozers and the pipe layers. And when everything's moving in sequence, it's a lot of fun to watch.
It's an absolute blast to watch. And I one of the most satisfying things about doing pipe work is we started over there today, and now we're over here today. And I don't know what it is about that, but it's so appealing because the progress is so measurable. And I loved that aspect of it, knowing you're just moving down a street, down a whatever it is. It's a pretty cool feeling. So, cause not like, there's a lot of construction. I mean, it's like a treatment plant that you guys do too. It's a little bit slower. So you see the treatment plant at the end of the day after 3 years. And I feel like the progress in a way is not as immediate.
It's different, right? I would say it's appealing, but it's appealing to a different group of people because you have to really appreciate construction and heavy equipment and earth moving to find digging a trench and burying something appealing, right? Because in pipeline work, the mark of a good pipeline is you can't tell you're ever there. So it is a little bit different than the treatment plant work or some of the commercial work that you get to see this thing rise up out of the ground. So,
But I think that's the fun thing about construction is there's something for everybody. So sometimes you have the people that want to travel, that want to do the high production stuff, that just want to go. And then other times they want more of a puzzle, like a treatment plant, and they just want to stay in the same spot. Challenge, but I'm here for the next 3 years. It's and then there's other work you do that's a different flavor as well. It's just like the marine stuff's a totally different ball game. So there is something for everybody. Or you can have multiple careers doing production work over here, then you go to treatment plants, then you go over here. You can do a lot in the course of a career in the construction industry, which I absolutely love.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I've really enjoyed about Garney over the years is where we started out as a plumbing company, got a name for ourselves in large diameter pipelines, moved into treatment plants, structural, concrete, mechanical, now having the opportunity, ability to bolt these other things in like the marine work. And to have some of our clients that maybe we built a pipeline or a penstock for them, that now have this other problem that they need to solve, and they don't know how to solve the problem, but they'll call us and say, we've got this situation. Can you come fix this for us? So we're a utility contractor, but we get into a lot of very interesting other types of work, like building wheel trimming facilities for the railroad.
What?
Rebuilding.
What facility?
Where they bring rail cars in, pick the rail car up, turn the wheels on a lathe, set the car back and go on.
Really?
So nothing to do with wastewater, right? But structural concrete.
Okay.
Heavy industrial.
Sure.
But we get into that through our work and experience in the water industry.
I see.
Just another fun example is building a bridge trestle for a penstock aqueduct in the mountains. We're a water wastewater contractor, but one of our clients needed a bridge rebuilt out of native pine trees. So yeah, we can do that. Why not? We've got the people, the ingenuity, the skill set, the know-how. So yes, we start out moving dirt and doing utilities, but find opportunities to get into these other things is pretty exciting. It's fun. That's what keeps it. That's what keeps it exciting.
Yeah. Where did you start out? Do you have an engineering degree?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So civil engineering?
Civil engineering, University of Kansas.
Okay. Well, so you've been a Kansas guy your whole life,
huh? Well, sort of. There's a lot of years of travel in between.
Yeah, sure.
Born and raised in Kansas, went to University of Kansas, engineering degree, came out of school and hit the road for about 15 years.
Where did you go to work out of school?
Straight to Garney.
Oh, straight to Garney.
Yeah.
So have you been there the whole time?
I'm a lifer.
No kidding.
Yeah.
I've actually met a lot of executives recently for whatever reason. They all start like the guy, Knife River, their CEO.
Yep.
He started there his career. Granite, their CEO, he started there. It's just amazing. I again feel like this is one of the only places where you can quite literally start as just a kid somewhere and just work your way up.
Absolutely.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's that easy, isn't it?
It is that easy. And my first job, so I went to school for engineering, hired into the construction industry and moved to Green Bay, Wisconsin.
Okay.
And the first year was working in the field with the crews, learning how to make grade, soap gaskets, lay pipe, de-stole pipe, and get that field experience. And then I mentioned traveling. I've crisscrossed the country a good number of times building different projects. But
when you started out, was it technically a field engineer job?
Yes. Yeah, that's what we'd call them today.
But that
project administrator at the time, I think, but field engineer today. Yeah.
I think that's the fun part about that job, though, is you just do whatever you're told. And so, and I mean that in a good way. Like, hey, this is your job. You're going to help administer the project. But then if there's a porta potty over there that needs to be moved, like you're the one to do that. Or when I went to this project in Texas, we needed an office, field office, and they were just like, figure it out. So it's like, there I am talking to brokers to try to find an office space or a piece, and then we get the office space. It's just a complete, for lack of a better term, just a shithole. So now my job is to like paint this office, get carpet in, put new doors in, and it's like, well, good thing I got an engineering degree. But you just do whatever needs to be done.
That is a very familiar story.
Yeah.
And even to this day is how it goes for a lot of our folks, right? You especially early in the career, it takes everybody doing a little bit of everything and whatever it takes sometimes. And so hasn't changed much since you and I started.
No, well, you started a little before me, just a little bit. How'd you find Garney to begin with?
I was recruited into the company, so just through career fairs, and I was through college, kind of trying to decide: do I want to get into engineering? Do I want to get into construction? What do I want to do with my career? And throughout college, in the summertime, I worked for a surveying company up in Minnesota and did some desk work and some field work. And through those summers, recognized that I didn't have a lot of fun at the desk. I had a lot more fun out in the field. Yeah. Doing the curb staking and the house staking and the topos and things like that, but was really attracted to the field. So as I got towards the end of college and decided, okay, I've got two different ways I can go here. I can be a design engineer. I can move into construction and build things and create things. And that's the direction I wanted to go. So had a few friends that got into vertical construction and commercial. But there was, I think it was those years doing the utilities and land planning and site work that kind of attracted me over to Garney and utility line. So
how did you get an engineering license along the way, or was that?
I did not.
Yeah, it was just, you go to work for a contractor, and so there's not really a need for
not
it,
at the time. Yeah. I think there is probably, there's more of a benefit today, I think, than there was years and years ago. And the reason I say that, more and more work today is collaborative delivery, design build, where we're working in partnership with engineers.
Yeah.
I think that the education in school helps learn the terminology, the basic concepts, prepare you to have those conversations. But I do think moving forward, especially in the collaborative delivery design build space, there may be a little more value in having that PE than what there was years ago. But
sure.
Yeah.
I started studying for mine, and then I spent like a week studying, and I realized like there's no way I pass this. there's no hope. So I just stopped. And then here we are. I wouldn't need it anyway.
They're fairly specialized these days. You can get a PE for construction management these days. It's not strictly designing and mathematical calculations anymore.
Yeah.
You can, they've opened it up.
I'm not an engineering mind, so to pass engineering school, it was just survival. And it was a lot of just in fairness, there's memorization.
Mm-hmm.
And then but then the next semester would come and, oh, that's out the window. Now I just need to survive this semester.
Mm-hmm.
But then the PE in like a true sense is kind of like a cumulative exam. I feel like it's like a final exam for all of college.
Mm-hmm.
There was just no way.
Can feel a little daunting.
Early in your career, like first few years, first 5 years, what was a memorable job, would you say?
I've got to pick my first job, partially because it was memorable. Also, what we were doing, where we were doing it. We had a project in Wisconsin, city of Green Bay, connecting the lake over to the city to provide a new water supply. At the time, that was the largest project that Garney had ever done. And even though we were in Wisconsin, we were still required or needed to work year round. So a part of this project crossed a swamp that was only passable in the winter.
Uh-huh.
And so very memorable. A lot of cold nights, cold weekends, not a lot of sunshine. Having to keep the equipment running 24 hours a day to keep it from gelling up.
Uh-huh.
Keeping the ditch open. It was that was a fun one.
I was going to say, Kansas City gets cold, but Green Bay, that's proper cold.
It's tough winters.
Anything near the lake,
so
it's just brutal. Oh man,
that one was the most memorable. Learned a lot on other projects. Had a lot of fun in other parts of the country. Fort Worth, another great project. Met some good mentors on that project and really learned. I had enough years of experience, I think, at that point to begin putting some of the pieces together and start managing more of the work. And met some great people there that really helped me learn and understand more of the project management side of the business. So that was very memorable. Kentucky, another great project. The people there were wonderful. The scenery was wonderful. Had some good crews I was working with, and high production, fast pace, and that was a lot of fun. So
when you were traveling around, I know every company is a little different. How did you know where you're going next? Was it like an email one day? Hey, how about Kentucky? And it's a question, but it's not really a question.
I'd say that's accurate. Yeah. Phrased as a question, but the only answer was yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I briefly worked for a company. Their colors are yellow and black. And another Midwest company, and it's similar. They kind of ask you, but it's either you go or you find somewhere else to work.
Mm-hmm.
But that's also, you also get experience you wouldn't get elsewhere.
Absolutely.
Which is what's cool about the big contractors is you can see so much in such a short amount of time, which is remarkably valuable.
I would say that's the largest benefit in traveling. And, is it a challenge to travel? It is. But there's so many opportunities that are created working in different regions with different clients, with different engineers, with different materials, with different products. There is no better way to learn the business than to travel and work with different people in different places. Because, just speaking specifically on pipelines, some parts of the country you see a lot of ductile iron pipe. Other parts of the country you see a lot of concrete. Some parts you see PVC. Only in certain regions do you see HDPE. And the only way to get exposure to those different products, materials, methods is to travel.
Yeah.
And learn from the people in the region and different ways to do things. So
whenever I post a lot of stuff on the internet. Whenever somebody criticizes something, like that's not the way you do it. I know it's like, oh, you've just worked in one place. You don't actually, you haven't gone very far from where you are, because that's not how it works somewhere else. Like laying pipe in Florida is a lot different than
much different.
Even South Carolina, than Virginia, than Texas. It's all, especially when you're digging in the ground, it's just different everywhere. But then I think a big part of construction and a big part of a successful project is working with people and working with different people and figuring out how different engineers work, different firms work, different inspectors work. That's probably the most valuable thing you can learn. Just learning about human nature. Because if you can figure that out, I feel like that's oftentimes the more complex part of a construction project.
I think it's learning how to work with different people and different personalities, but also learning from each of them and taking the best things away from each of them. I can think back over the years. I'm not going to say that every project I was on was a huge success and every group I worked with was phenomenal. I think that's the case in any business. Most of them were good and a lot of good people out there. But I think, what really left the impact or had the longer term benefit was just exposure to all those different people. And okay, I like the way this person does things, or it's interesting how they think about this, or the way this engineer designs this or details that, and being able to take the best away from each of those situations and projects and put them all together is very valuable.
Yeah. I know you probably, like this summer, you've got a lot of young kids coming out of school, going to Garney. What kind of advice do you give those younger people?
A few pieces. The first, I would say, heading into the internship for the summer, my advice is learn as much as you can, as fast as you can. Get out in the field, meet the crews, and learn from them. Because there's a tremendous amount that you can learn in the field that they're never going to teach you in college. And this is your opportunity to get out there and be in the middle of it. That's early in the summer. As we get later in the year and have opportunities to speak with everyone again, it begins to shift a little bit more to career advice. And career advice, the biggest thing that I tell people is these days anymore is just to be patient. Look at the next 30 years of your life as a career, not as a job. Yeah. And it takes time to build. It takes time to learn. It takes time to grow, and it takes time to build. And be patient. Stick with it. If you do those things, the future is going to be very bright for you. But if you get distracted or tempted to, move around a lot, it's going to be tough.
And I feel like that's a bad tendency in the construction industry, is people moving around a lot. And I see it all the time. They're just kind of like, you just watch them. It's like you're just spinning in a circle. Like you're just not going in any one direction. You're just sitting there, just spinning around.
Yeah.
And if you just stuck in one spot for even a few years, you're probably going to be better off. Like I'm all for going to different companies. When I was in college, I worked for 5 different companies by design, because I just wanted to see a bunch of stuff to figure out what I wanted. And that was the advice I was given. Go to work for a small company, go to work for a medium company, go to work for a big company. Figure out what you like and then settle in and focus on that front. But that was by design. Especially people in their 20s, they're just bouncing around everywhere, and it just doesn't do them any good.
Yeah, and I think a big part of that is, the construction community, whether it's utilities or commercial or structural or transportation or whatever it is, those communities are relatively small, and there is a lot of weight in relationships and long-term relationships and building a network, and I think the best way to do that is to consistently, stay with the same group for a number of years and build the resource tree, build the network, find the people to go talk to and ask and learn from. And so,
yeah. Have you always been with Garney?
I have since college. Yeah.
So you didn't leave, you just stuck with it.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yep. Was your career path the traditional career path? You go from project coordinator to then what? Maybe like what's the next step back in the day?
Yeah. For us, it was, well, I'll put it in today's terms, but field engineer, project engineer, assistant project manager, project manager, senior, and then up to regional responsibility. And
so you worked through the ladder. When did you start to be more of at the executive level? How long did that take?
For us in our classification, that would have happened around senior manager, regional manager.
Okay.
Beginning to take on a little bit bigger picture view of the company, and to learn more about the business, different aspects of the business, because there comes a point that it's not just about building that one project. Yeah. It's about managing 2 or 3 projects, and then that grows into building the business for a region. Mm-hmm. And then you start to learn and realize, okay, there's a lot more to this than just bidding and building work. There's the people component, the HR component, the accounting component. And I think that's kind of the point in time where at least I began getting more and more exposure to the corporate side of the business and running the business.
Okay. Was that always the intent? Did you always just want to keep going, or did it, in a way, it happen, or a little bit of both?
I think it happened by design.
Yeah.
When I came into the industry, did I say I want to be CEO one day? No, that's not where I set my sights. So I think that end of it happened organically. Uh-huh. Was there some well-planned, deliberate succession planning within the organization? Absolutely there was for several years. But no, early in my career, I set out to build stuff. And I still am today, just building different stuff in a different way.
Uh-huh.
So
more people in a company rather than specific projects now. When did you become CEO of the company?
A little over a year ago.
Okay, so that's right. It's somewhat recent. Mm-hmm. When did you know that was going to happen? For quite a while?
3 years ago.
3 years ago?
Yeah. So we had a fairly extensive succession and transition process, and went very well. It took a couple of years, but I think it was worth the process for sure.
It's a big deal, especially with how the company is pretty good size now. Mm-hmm. So you get that right, good things happen.
You kind of get one chance at it.
You get one chance. Uh-huh. How long has the company been in ESOP?
Since mid-'80s.
Okay. So
when some tax laws changed in the mid-'80s and made ESOPs and S-Corps more available. And that's when Charles began selling the company back to the employees.
Has it always been 100%? Or when did
it took a few years to buy the founder entirely out of the company. Sure. We started the ESOP in the mid-'80s. By the mid-'90s, we were 100% employee owned.
So you're probably one of the older ESOPs in the United States.
We're one of the more mature. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I would say I didn't know it was that long ago.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And a good number of ESOP companies also in Kansas City. That seems to be both for engineering and construction. There was a lot of activity there in the early 80s, and that's, I think, part of what drew us in. But yeah, Charles was definitely an early adopter and thought it would be a great idea, and we're thankful for that.
Oh, it seems like it's worked out.
It's worked out very well.
Yeah. I guess there's kind of two sides to being an ESOP, because one, from a retention standpoint, when done right, it's not, I feel like some people, they think it's like a secret potion, like a magic potion that they can drink and their employee engagement issues will be resolved. Mm-hmm. Definitely not the case.
No.
I think it takes a ridiculous amount of work.
It's a piece of a puzzle.
It's a piece of a puzzle, mm-hmm. but it's certainly a very potent weapon in the challenge that is retaining people, attracting great people, and keeping an organization together. But then there's also the other side of it, is that you got to keep growing. And I think a lot of companies, ESOPs, have grown by acquisition. It seems like Garney's just grown almost organically.
Largely organically. Yeah. We've had a couple of sizable acquisitions. Yeah. But yeah, the majority of our growth's been organic. Yeah.
Which is pretty impressive. But then But to grow organically, you've got to, the market's only so big in a region. So you've got to go now across the United States.
Yeah. Expand your skill set, whether it's by geography or client or the work you do or how you do it. Have to continue to find new ways. Yeah.
How do you all message the ESOP? Like, say I hire on with Garney. How do you all explain it to somebody that's never been a part of it?
I think the simplest way to explain it is it's an opportunity to own a part of the company that you work for. You have an opportunity to see the results of your hard work. You have an opportunity to save for your retirement and your future. And in our case, at $0 out of pocket, in ways that you don't always have those opportunities at every company, frankly, at most companies. To build your retirement and build your wealth in that manner. And, I think another way to message or a part is that not only is that beneficial to the individual and what they may be able to grow in the long term, it is also beneficial in the short term in the fact that we're 100% employee owned with 100% participation, whether it's from our leadership group to our middle management to field management to hourly craft. The way our ESOP is designed, every single person in the company is an owner. So no matter what project you're on, where you're working, who you're working with, the person next to you also owns a piece of the company. And that is different.
And it's, at the size you all are, it's one of the bigger ESOPs in the United States. That's 100%. Because I think there's big employee-owned companies, but not everybody. I go to work for them as a laborer. I'm not a part of that.
Yeah, I would say in the ESOP world, there's a variable Baskin Robbins out there of different structures of ESOPs and whether they're employee-owned, 100% employee-owned, and how the participation within the ESOP is set up and whether those shares or grants are given to their employees or if people buy in, whether the shares are owned entirely with current employees or if they're owned outside of the company. I think there's so many different designs out there. A lot of different approaches.
A ton. But I love, like, if I were to redo things, I would be seriously considering in my 20s going to work for a company that's 100% employee owned.
Absolutely.
Because I now understand the benefits of it. It's extremely attractive. And then that's where, as you've said, the time component comes into play. Because the longer you let that bake, the bigger the benefit.
Sure.
And it can be a very significant benefit over a career.
It's like buying Apple stock in the 90s, right? If you bought and hold for a week, you didn't see much, but you look back 20, 30 years later and think, wow, that was pretty smart.
Yeah. And I guess the people that have been at Garney since the 90s, it's not just like a retirement. It's a really, really nice retirement.
It's impactful.
Yeah, I would say so. So I go to work for Garney. At what point do I become an employee owner? Day one?
Day one for us.
Vesting period?
Yeah, it's day one. So shares are allocated day one. We do have a vesting schedule. Okay. That's a 6-year vesting schedule where each year, if you were to leave the program, you would own a larger and larger percentage of those shares each year through 6 years. Okay. But yeah, we begin participation day one.
That's
really important.
That's really amazing. Being a traveling company and having a career in which you've traveled, not the easiest from a personal life standpoint. How did you navigate that as you were younger?
I think when I was younger, it was easy, right?
Sure.
It was me and a U-Haul trailer and a dog. It was a lot easier and a lot of fun. I think sometime, I'd say for me, later 20s is when it got a little more difficult. You start planning out other parts of life and thinking about your future and maybe it's a spouse and kids that are on your mind and balancing those things becomes a little more difficult. I would say it's very important. As you work for a construction company, you're traveling, you're thinking about planning life and here's your spouse or significant other. I think they have to be on board.
Yeah.
They have to understand. They have to be a part of it. You have to make them a part of it. And I think all those things are just absolute must. I've seen things go both ways with folks in our industry, and anyway, I just think it's critical that your partner is a true partner, and they're a part of it.
But what do you think the difference is between the going both ways? Because I think it's a reality of construction, moving around, especially with the big work. If you want to be part of the big exciting jobs, you're going to have to move, and that's not a bad thing. I think it's a really cool thing. And who doesn't want to work on like some of the big sexy projects? It's a lot of fun. But I don't feel like it's talked about ever, or very rarely do I hear it talked about as, it's talked about from a work standpoint, but I feel like the personal standpoint is almost like, let's just not talk about that. Let's just keep working.
Well, I'd say it's a couple of things, and I don't profess to have the magic potion here, but I think it's for the individual understanding that, look, it is going to take some sacrifice, and it is going to be tough for a few years. But if I knuckle down and push through this now, it will benefit my career in the long term. Yeah. So the deferred gratification piece of it, I think, has to be there at a certain level, because it's going to be challenging. But if I get through this, if I stick with this, if I grow my skill set, I will advance my career, and one day maybe I won't need to travel as much. I think that's a part of it. I think the personal development side of it is important, and being able to have, there's a lot of conversation about work-life balance.
Yeah.
We've tended to shift that conversation, and I'm more of a proponent in work-life integration. So it's not work or home life. It's finding ways to bring the two together. Maybe it's a spouse traveling with you, or coming to visit, or looking for opportunities when they're on the road to have them join you, and just finding ways to integrate the two. Because, a part of traveling, you get to see a lot of different parts of the country. Sure. A lot of beautiful parts of the country, and making the most of what you have wherever you are with whoever you're with, and finding ways to integrate those two things.
Yeah, I think
it's a tough question to answer, because it's not an easy solution. It's not a one size fits all type deal.
No, but I think it's definitely something worth talking about, because I think that at least the next generation coming up too, in a lot of ways, like I grew up with divorced parents, and it's like, and in part because my dad was always gone. Go figure. And so I saw that, and it's like, I don't want to do that. Or I don't want it. I've seen it. I don't need to see it again. Well, I don't want to be a part of that.
And I'll say too, we've recognized over the years, and I think most of the construction industry has, certainly we have, over the last several years, that traveling is difficult. With new generations entering the workforce, it seems to be becoming even more difficult.
Yeah.
And taking a little bit more of a regionalized approach, where instead of crisscrossing the country now, we've gone from a handful of regional offices to 15 regional offices nationwide.
Yeah.
There's more opportunity now for people to stay within a relative geography of a certain city. Is there still an ask from time to time to say, hey, I know you're in Nashville, but we need you in Texas for 6 months. But if you can come help us out for 6 months, we'll get you back to Nashville as quick as we can.
Sure.
And then you can settle back in there. So I think we've certainly adapted in that manner, in trying to find that right balance.
Yeah, I think
get people back home as often as we can, because the full-time 10-year road warrior, those people, they just don't exist anymore. But finding ways to rotate people in and out, or on the road, and bring them back home, that's been very helpful.
Well, I think they don't exist for good reason in a lot of ways, because some of those guys are pretty rough. I guess they've lived a life, and not saying they don't exist anymore, but I think there's like a reasonable middle ground. I don't think the companies that say this is just the way it is, you go where we say,
they're not going to make it
and
today.
Just deal with it. I don't know. That's a model, and there's some big companies out there, that's their model, and it's like, I don't know how you're going to find a workforce saying that. But then On the other side, because some contractors need people so bad, they'll make it seem whatever. No, it's not even that hard. Yeah, no, super balanced, just 40 hours a week. But that's not how it is either. It's still construction. There's still weather. It's still miserable. It's still hard work. You're still going to have to move around. Like I feel like there's like a middle ground. I feel like you guys do a very nice job at.
We're always occupying
that. Yeah, that middle ground of, hey, here's the realities. Yeah, you are going to have to travel. Yeah, it is going to be long hours sometimes. Yeah, it's going to be pretty miserable sometimes. But at the same time, we also acknowledge that, yeah, you do have a family and you do have kids and so on and so forth. So how can we work together on this? But I think something you said as well, when it comes to your spouse, is you have to make them part of it. And the way you put that's, I think, interesting based on what I've learned, because you put the onus on you to make them a part of it, to bring them in. And I think that takes work, that takes effort. Like, I think me just assuming my spouse is going to understand, that's completely absurd. Yeah. Oh, you don't support me. It's like, no, I haven't made them part of it. And I've learned, not that I've had a successful, not that I'm married or anything. I'm not the one to give advice, but even just painting the picture of, hey, yeah, right now, wildly unbalanced. Like, yeah, do I work 7 days a week? Yes. But here's the big picture. Here's where we're going. I think that piece is huge too. Trying to, yes, right now it is this way, like being realistic, but also saying, but here's where we're going. And this is pretty cool over here. And I think it's, again, a company like that, like Garney, that's also 100% employee owned. Like, that's a very real possibility. To say that's not a stretch. It's like, hey, if I put in my time here, this is the potential. And here's all the people that have done it. So it's not crazy. It's
not impossible. Yeah.
No, it's not at all. I think it's really appealing. Where's your focus nowadays? Like, what do you spend most of your time on?
Where I spend most of my time, since taking the reins as CEO, number one, we have a hell of a good company that's been well run for a lot of years and provided, the structure and support and the things that we needed to do what we did and really put us in a fantastic position now where we're able to look out a little further and look a little more strategically and say, okay, what are we going to do with this business next? So we're a water wastewater contractor. We're builders. We're creators. That's what we do. So where I've been spending a lot of my time is thinking about what's next. So yes, we're that. What are the adjacencies? What are the opportunities? What are the parts of the country? What are the industries? So that's really where I've been trying to spend my time. Thankfully we've got a lot of good people that have been with our company a long time. I'm not going to say the machine runs itself. That would be a little bit of a lie, but sure. but we're doing, the company's doing such a good job and the market is good right now. And so it's really afforded that opportunity to kind of look up and look a little further down the road.
And I guess that's, I don't think people understand that's the reality of a big company. The bigger you are, the hungrier it is. And you've got to keep a lot of work out ahead of the company because of how much you're chewing through every week.
Feeding the beast. Yeah.
Yeah. And just the more people you add, the more offices you add. Yeah. It's just the more you've got to feed it. And there's only the work you guys do. There's only so much work in every market, like I said. So now it's, what other markets do we go after? Marine construction. What are the opportunities there?
It's a nice adjacency.
It is. Yeah. I think what's impressive though about Garney is and this is what I've seen with, I think, the top performing construction companies. I feel like you all have been very disciplined in staying in your lane.
Yes.
And it's probably along the way been tempting to go outside of that lane.
Sure.
But it seems like you all have been pretty disciplined.
Yeah.
And just said, this is what we do. Was that a deliberate decision?
I think it's been a very deliberate decision along the way. Since I can remember it, at Garney, we've believed heavily in, focus on doing what we do best, and work with others who do what they do best. Over the years, have we expanded our self-perform capabilities? Yes, we have, but there's certain specialties out there that, the good people in that business are in that business for a reason, because they're good at what they do.
Yeah.
So let's find ways to work with them. Let's find ways to partner with them. We don't necessarily have to self-perform that piece of the work. And I think that's allowed us to stay disciplined and focused in the water industry, but continue to grow and over time bring more skill sets in and build larger and more complex projects where while we're self-performing, we've got some very strong subcontractors and really great relationships out there that allow us to build some of these monster water treatment plants, and we don't have to self-perform 100% of it if we have good partners.
Yeah. And I think all that too helps. You're not just building to build, you got to make money.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's a key part of the most profitable companies I've seen too, is they know what they're good at and they do what they're good at. They lean on others to do what they're not good at. They end up making quite a bit of money as well, which is beneficial.
It's the hedgehog theory, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
You
look at you look back over the years at the companies that did well and those that struggled, and who paid attention to the hedgehog and who ran a little far afield, and you see some trends.
But I feel like it's a tale as old as time in every industry, but in construction, what's often rewarded is revenue.
Mm-hmm.
The ENR rankings
can be.
Yeah, we're XYZ, and it's like, well, that doesn't really tell me a whole lot. Yeah, it says something, but also it doesn't. I don't know. Did you make a lot of money? And sometimes it's not at all. And so, cool, you did 10 billion in revenue. You didn't make any money. So what? Because I don't think that's good for anybody, because then it just drives the market down and it makes the market less healthy, which then it just erodes the overall industry. Whereas we need to be in the other direction. We need a stronger industry so that we can compete, especially from a workforce standpoint, so that we can raise wages, we can pay people more, we can take care of people more, and make this a career that's sought after,
mm-hmm.
not a last resort. Which again is why I like learning about and supporting the companies that I think are doing it right, because we need more of that. It's in everybody's best interest to do more of that.
I agree with you very much.
Yeah. What are the trends you see in the industry? Because you're across the United States. I feel like in construction, oftentimes companies are very siloed, executives are very siloed, but you have a very wide-ranging perspective. What do you see from like a trend standpoint?
We see different trends in different places. Just right off the bat, an obvious trend that we see is the size and scale of the projects getting much larger at a very, very fast rate. I mentioned the project in Green Bay, Wisconsin, being the largest in the company's history at the time that I was on it. Total project value there was $34 million. About a month ago, we submitted a proposal on an $800 million project.
Sure.
And that's not just us. A large project, whether it's a treatment plant or a pipeline, 30, 40, 50 million was a big job.
Mm-hmm.
400 million, 500 million is fairly common these days.
Yeah.
And we're starting to scratch the $1 billion mark for single projects in water infrastructure. That's a trend we're seeing that nationwide. It's from Florida to Texas to California and everywhere in between. So just the size, scale, and scope of these projects is exploding.
But I think I talked to another water CEO. I'll tell you who it was after this, but he said the exact same thing. And I see like the lobbyists, the politicians, even some contractors, it's always a good thing. Bigger projects, more money, this and that. It can be. But I also find it in a lot of other ways really alarming how much everything has increased even over the past 5 years, 4 years. Just I mean, just even and even the amount of time it takes for these projects to start, and the environmental process and the legal process and all of these reviews, and it's added all of this additional, and then that's not even to say anything with materials, with equipment, with all of that increasing like crazy. Like, it's in a lot of ways not a good thing, because it's just taking more and more money to build arguably the same thing.
Well, I think the contract value of these projects going up at a rapid pace is due to a couple, several different things all at the same time. So labor costs are going up, material costs are going up. The complexity of these projects with some of the technologies that are out there is increasing. So just the cost of building a basic project is increasing. But I think what's multiplying on top of that is where we're at in the U.S. with our aging infrastructure, that not only is the infrastructure that was built in the 70s and 80s beginning to age out, we've seen huge population increases that, number one, we already need to replace the old infrastructure, and we need to build this new infrastructure to keep up with population trends. So we're going to sandwich these two things together into one massive project.
Sure.
And so I think the tale of U.S. infrastructure for the last 30, 40 years is catching up with us. The same time that some of these input costs are increasing, and that's what's multiplying these up.
Does the whole aging infrastructure thing ever keep you up at night? You've seen some of these pipes.
So there's a lot of things I'm going to avoid during this conversation, but yeah. No, our infrastructure. So we have safe, reliable drinking water across the U.S., but there's some infrastructure out there that is absolutely in dire need of a lot of attention.
I feel, and this was my feeling. I spent a month in Europe, and I've traveled now to 5 continents, quite a few countries over the past few years. I grew up thinking the U.S. was the gold standard in the world. Mm-hmm. I don't feel that way anymore. I go to a lot of other countries, and I'm like, come back. I'm like, man, we're starting to get lapped in some ways. And this is starting to be alarming, because infrastructure is the foundation for everything else.
For the economy, yeah.
It's a leading indicator. Mm-hmm. And so if a country wants to go build its economy, what do? Go build stuff. That's what they do. Like, look at China. Textbook example. Let's just build a bunch of stuff. Highways, cities, rail lines, water infrastructure, dams. We just need everything. That'll grow the economy. And so if that's starting to lag behind, it's a little alarming in a way. And I don't know if we're obviously not that far behind. Like, there's some pretty nice stuff, and the plants you guys are doing, some of the projects that I see all over, really nice. Mm-hmm. But there's also a lot of old stuff out there. And I feel like it's being, I don't know. I don't feel like it's talked about enough in a way. And we just passed this historic infrastructure bill. I've talked to a lot of people, though. They're just like, man, it hasn't really, it's sold as like this was the biggest game changer in United States infrastructure ever. But then
very little of it has actually made its way into
very little,
at least in our industry. Yeah,
that's across the board. That's highway. That's everything. And so everybody that's building the infrastructure said, yeah, I mean, it's like, I don't know, kind of help, but not really. Like, it's covered inflation. And so I just don't know. I don't know if there's a solution or not. But I think you guys are in one of the most important industries and are seeing this front and center.
I would say one thing that we're starting to see is, and this is going to make the U.S. different than a lot of Europe, but the obligation or responsibility to maintain the infrastructure here in the U.S. is really put on the states. The federal government's only getting involved when they need to and setting certain minimum standards, but I would say with regards to water infrastructure, you look at a couple of different states in the U.S. and I think they're I would argue that they're far eclipsing some of what we see in Europe, both in
like
water quality, reliability, long-term water planning.
Yeah,
I would put Texas up there. I would put Florida up there. I would put Carolinas, Arizona. Yeah, so I would say our country as a whole may be falling behind in some areas, or not. I don't want to say falling behind, is not as far in the lead as we were one day. But I think other parts of the country and certain states that have really got it together are doing a great job.
But that, to me, it's like I go to, 1 hour I'm in the doom and gloom side of it. Then the other hour it's like, well, that's the opportunity. that's it. Like that's what you can dedicate your entire career to, is bringing the existing infrastructure into that next generation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's from like a water infrastructure standpoint, there's never not work.
Yes, that's it. It is a very steady, stable, long-term, good market. Yeah, because human beings are always going to need to drink water, and they're always going to need to treat water.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Take a shower and flush a toilet. It's that simple, and that's not going to change.
No, it doesn't matter who's the president, where the economy's at. You've got pandemic essential businesses. It doesn't get a whole lot more essential than making sure your faucet turns on, making sure your toilet flushes. That kind of stuff does not go away.
Ask Houston during Snowmageddon when everybody's houses froze up and they went a week or two without water.
Yeah.
People don't sometimes appreciate how good we have it here in the U.S. when you can walk to your kitchen sink, turn on the faucet, and there's water, or
it is
have
a
a
miracle.
Toilet or a shower. Mm-hmm.
It is.
You don't think about it until it's gone.
Yeah, until it's gone. But just you need everybody's faucet to turn on every time, every day, every hour, across hundreds of millions of people, and from all different water supplies. And the fact that it actually works is kind of a miracle at the same time, because that is it's incredible. It's really something. And it starts, I guess, with the bigger projects that you all do. It ultimately comes down to a little water service going into your home or your apartment building, but it starts with at
a 300 million gallon per day treatment plant. And then comes out of a spigot in a kitchen. So
one of the interesting projects that you guys did recently, I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona, and would hike in the mountain preserve, Phoenix Mountain Preserve, all the time growing up, all the time, because my mom lived right there. And then I saw this project pop up right through the mountain preserve. I was like, I got to go see that. So I get in touch with Kiewit, and I see the project from Kiewit, but it's Garney. It's you all doing. This was before I'd ever, my first interaction officially with Garney, and it wasn't even official. It was through Kiewit. And it was, 66-inch probably, like big transmission main through the mountain preserve up into North Phoenix. And it was because, I'm just saying this for other people. It's because Phoenix has two water supplies, Salt River Project, Central Arizona Project. But then other states have the rights to the water before Arizona does over here. And so if the water does get a little less, they're not going to have enough, but then they can pull from up here. But to pull from up here, they need to connect the dots. And it's just like, this is the stuff you don't think about. You just turn your faucet on, water comes out. But that was a massive project, especially for Phoenix, this big transmission main through the middle of the city, underneath the highway, expansion at the treatment plant, and just all this stuff, just in case they don't have enough water.
Just to have the alternate supply.
Just the alternate supply to connect because Phoenix is on two supplies, and there's just a line in the middle. That's stuff you don't think about.
Yeah, the network of infrastructure, I think most people have no idea how complex it is, between the storage reservoirs and transmission mains and treatment plants and distribution mains, storage tanks, and all of it is pretty incredible. When you start to map these things out.
The other one that just boggled my mind was Barnard's working on the big dam project, reservoir project outside of Colorado.
Yep.
It's like, we're going to put the whole population of Colorado in the driest part of Colorado, and all the water's on the other side of the mountains. So we need to get the water from over there all the way up over here. But when the water's over there, we don't necessarily need it over here. So we need to store it. And it's just like, this is what it takes. Now you have to build this enormous dam bathtub to store the water, so you have it, and you can collect it, and then you can use it down the road. It's just...
And you got to get it up and over the mountains.
Yeah, I have to go up. Yeah, well, that's not even incorporating that part. Where do you see the overall industry going, future state? What are some of the trends you see future?
I will say, project value cost. We talked about that a little bit. I think we'll continue to see a trend in delivery method with more collaborative delivery. And there are different types of collaborative delivery, whether it be construction manager at risk, design build, progressive design build. But I do believe we're going to continue to see more of that in the future. We do still see some hard bid work here and there. But as you mentioned earlier, owners are putting more and more value on the quality of the work and the safety of the workers. And so while that's possible to get some of that through pre-qualifications in the hard bid world, I think we've seen a lot of success, and our owners have really enjoyed the more collaborative type approach to the project. So that's a trend that I think will continue and probably stay with us for several more years in delivery.
How, from a workforce standpoint, how do we work ourselves out of that pickle as an industry?
Recruit, retain, right? That's a simple recipe. So how do we retain? Training and developing, again, sounds simple. But I think learning how to train and develop a workforce that's specific to your industry and to provide long-term opportunity for those employees. So, the U.S. has a net deficit on the number of construction workers that we need to build the projects that are out there today. It's a statistical fact. So any idea that we're going to close that gap and all of a sudden tomorrow have a surplus is not going to happen. Which brings in the other reality that all of the construction companies, all of the contractors, and whether it's anywhere in heavy civil and whether it's transportation or commercial or pipelines, we're all competing for the same people in a very small pool. But I think because of that, retention becomes very important. And I think some of the keys to retention are training, developing, giving a future, giving a purpose, and really focusing efforts on those employees and helping them build a career.
But in worst case scenario, we just use robots for everything. That's where this
probably not while I'm alive.
But what is that? What is training, development, purpose? What does that look like on a micro level?
On a micro level,
yeah. How do you articulate young project engineer here in Nashville, Tennessee? How does that work its way down to me as an individual on a job site?
I think project engineers are a part.
As an example,
I have less concern there than I do with the hourly craft, frankly.
I'm a pipe layer in Nashville, Tennessee.
There we go.
How does that look for me?
Step one is communication. Finding ways to communicate with 100% of our employees. Frankly, not all of our employees' first language is English, for example. Not all of our employees have the ability to read, for example. And we have continued to find new and better ways to communicate with those employees, because if you can't communicate, if you have a communication gap, whether it's between a pipe layer and a top man or an operator and a pipe layer, the operator and superintendent, if you have communication gaps, things don't go well. When things don't go well, people don't enjoy their job. They don't stick together. They don't stick around. It doesn't matter, how much learning opportunity you give them. First step is closing the communication gap.
Yeah. In laying pipe too, good communications, everything. And I worked with a bunch of Mexican guys, so I had to learn how they communicated, and I actually enjoyed it.
It goes both ways, right?
Yeah, it was quite a bit of fun, but it's like if I don't figure out what these guys are saying when they're yelling at me for a pala, it's like, what's that? It's like, it's a shovel. Okay, I got it. But it was my job to learn how they communicated so that I could support them more effectively, and vice versa. And so once you allow them to influence you, then you can influence them in a way, which is pretty cool. But like to the language thing, when I was at your meeting, rehydrate
Yeah.
in April, I think it was April. You had the whole company was part of it. So you had a lot of people present, but then you had shut your company down across the United States and were live streaming it to everybody, which was remarkable. It's a lot of money. You had a translator there, basically translating everything live, I think it was, in Spanish.
Yep.
Which was then broadcasted out across the United States.
Yeah, we had a lot of things going on at once there. So for the simulcast, we had both English and Spanish subtitles that were being translated live in the moment and live streamed.
Okay.
We also had this year a number of hourly craft in attendance at the annual meeting, a handful of whom Spanish was their first and preferred language. And so we also had translators in the room sitting at the table with them, similar to what you'd see at a UN conference where they're translating live into an earpiece for the person sitting next to them.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's pretty cool.
There was a lot going on there.
There's a lot going on there. That's the retain piece. How does the recruit piece work?
How does the which part?
Recruit piece work.
Recruiting?
Yeah.
Word of mouth. Have a good, I know everybody says this, but start with culture. Have a good culture. Have a place that people want to work. Have a place that, our best recruiters are our employees. Recruiting teams are good at creating access, to potential workforce. But our strongest recruiters day in and day out are the people that work in the company.
Sure.
And so if they are happy with what they do, where they do it, how they do it, they think the company's treating them fairly, everybody out there has friends and family. And so I think that's the number one way to recruit. Yeah.
What does culture's like construction's cool because it's physical. You can see the pipe. You can see the dirt. You can see the equipment. See the diesel fuel. Culture's squishy. You can't really see it. What do you think about when it comes to culture? How do you develop culture in so many different places? Because that's also the interesting thing about construction too, is everybody's talking about remote work. Construction's been remote since it began. I mean, you have remote workers. It's everybody's technically remote because you've got, I don't know how many job locations right now.
Hundreds
across the United States. How do you work culture into so many different places?
So I'm going to go back to the communication piece and communicate. The number of ways that we're communicating out to our employees today, weekly emails, weekly newsletters, quarterly newsletters, weekly briefs, video content, quarterly shutdowns where a part of the shutdown is focused on training and developing and learning more about the company. And then a part of the shutdown is focused on, some hands-on skills training. So the amount of communication out to the employees, and it's not just the managers, it's not just the hourly craft, it's everyone, is I just think absolutely critical.
Yeah. I guess that's something I've learned too, is communication, but in as many different formats as possible, even if it's the exact same thing. Like one of my favorite quotes is, repetition doesn't spoil the prayer. You go to church, you say the same thing every week. Why is that? Repetition's valuable. And even if I think people are afraid of saying the same thing repeatedly because it's like, well, they're going to think I think they're stupid or I'm going to sound stupid. But I've found you have to say something sometimes over and over and over in video, in writing, in this meeting for it to be understood across the board.
Yeah, there's some old sayings out there. You hear something 3 times and you remember it, then it was 7 times and you remember it. I read a study not this long ago from Harvard, and the numbers actually, I believe it was closer to 32. So you have to hear something or be told something 32 times before it actually becomes a part of your integrated memory and influences how you do a thing. So it's 30 plus times.
Yeah.
So if you think about everything that needs to be communicated out to your employees, in all the different medium, and then tally that up to make sure they hear it at least 30 times. It's a lot of communication.
It's a lot of communication. Yeah. And it's just, I struggle with it with, I don't know, 60 something people, but to have thousands involved, it's pretty incredible. Well, I'm just, I guess I'm just really happy to be part of the whole Garney party these days. It's been fun to get to know you all.
It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. And I'm really happy to be a part of it. It's been nice to get to know Jordan and the rest of the party over there. And I'm excited. I think I'm going to go out to a job site at some point this fall.
That'd be great. Here around town, or
no? So I've been to some job sites around town, but Jeff wants me to get out to one of the sexy ones.
Okay.
Really, potentially
I've got a few in mind.
Yeah. So we're gonna try to figure out what we can time and
That'd be great.
And check out. But the one he really wanted me to see was happening during the Rehydrate event.
Yep.
So that went out the window. But the media, the videos and everything from that turned out really, really good. It turned out really nice.
We've got an awesome video and production crew.
Yeah.
Absolute top notch.
I guess before we wrap up, what's the value of spending on something like that?
Communication. How many times,
that was a loaded question. Loaded question.
I felt the softball coming.
Yeah. But even something like that is not commonplace at large construction companies.
No.
There are some very large construction companies with one person dedicated to communications, and they're wrapped up in investor communications or whatever it is. But when I talk about marketing storytelling, it's for your people, your existing workforce.
Absolutely.
If you take care of that, then the other stuff I feel like is taken care of.
It becomes a whole lot easier.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, if I want to learn more about Garney, I'm assuming it's garney.com.
It is.
Okay. And I can find careers
got some
and everything.
great video links, career links, and employment page where you can see different job postings and opportunities. We also have a screen for our plane holders, our plane room for various projects that we're bidding. So whether just curious to learn more about the company, see what employment opportunities we have, or maybe see what projects are out there on the horizon for us that we're bidding.
Sweet.
All on the website.
And you all hiring across the United States?
Yeah. Coast to coast.
Yeah. Coast to coast. Okay. Cool. Well, thanks for coming by.
Absolutely.
And, guess we'll see you soon.
Great.